Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to our weekly review of how religion impacts humanity. This week's headlines. Bodies are seen on the streets in Lashkar Gah as the Taliban are on the brink of taking this key Afghan city, and residents are told to flee. Armed Afghan women take to the streets in a show of defiance against the Taliban. An Indian girl was killed for wearing jeans. The Ganesh temple in Bhong city was attacked in broad daylight. The inquest for the Streatham knifeman is told that he was a cause for concern before his release from jail. An atheist train conductor who declared that he didn't want to live in a Muslim alcohol-free caliphate has succeeded in arguing that his opinion is the equivalent of a religious belief. In the USA, white evangelicals resist getting vaccinated most, and Kent Hovind has been arrested. Bishop Robert Barron hates John Lennon's song Imagine. In Andrew Canard news, actor Chris Pratt seeks a new deity to replace God, and evangelicals are pranked into putting up a statue of Pontius Pilate. A spoof ad on Facebook announces a global prayer to end atheism. There are corpses on the roads. We do not know if they are civilians or the Taliban, the man told the BBC Afghan service in an interview on WhatsApp. Dozens of families have fled their homes and settled near the Helmand River. Capturing the besieged Helmand provincial capital would be of huge symbolic value to the insurgents as they continue their rapid advance after the pullout of foreign forces. Helmand was the centerpiece of the US and British military campaign. The United Nations and other agencies are warning of a worsening humanitarian crisis. At least 40 civilians have been killed in Lashkar Gah in the past day, the UN said on Tuesday. The Afghan army urged civilians to leave Lashkar Gah ahead of a major offensive against the Taliban, the hardline Islamist group that was driven from power by US-led forces 20 years ago. Elsewhere in the south, Taliban are trying to capture Kandahar, their former stronghold, and clashes have also intensified in Herat in the west. Fighting has been continuing in Lashkar Gah for days, with the militants now reportedly in control of most districts. We are going through difficult days, a student in the city told the BBC. The Taliban set fire to the ground and government air forces to the skies. The Taliban have made further advances this week, despite Afghan and US warplanes targeting the insurgents. There are reports that Taliban fighters have taken positions inside homes, shops, and the bazaar. People are trapped in their homes while fighting goes on in the streets. The Taliban told us if we didn't leave the house in half an hour, we would be counted among the police and Afghan forces. Fida Mohammed, a tribal elder, told The Guardian, "The situation is appalling. The Taliban are climbing all the high-rise buildings in the centre of the city and setting up fortifications, then being bombed by the government. Shops are closed and government and military vehicles are lying destroyed in the middle of the road. The war continues within a few meters of the governor's office and the National Security Directorate. Central government said recently they had deployed new commandos to Lashkar Gah, but we didn't see them. Hundreds of Afghan reinforcements have since reportedly been deployed to the city. Majid Akhund, the deputy chairman of the Helmand Provincial Council, said the Taliban had taken control of 9 Lashkar Gah districts as the Afghan government and US aircraft pounded their position with strikes. General Sami Sadat, an Afghan commander leading the military efforts in Helmand, told the residents to flee. "Please leave as soon as possible so that we can start our operation," he said in a message to the city of 200,000 people. "I know it is very difficult for you to leave your houses. It is hard for us too. But if you are displaced for a few days, please forgive us. We are fighting the Taliban wherever they are. We will not leave a single Talib alive." The Taliban advances came as the Afghan president, Ashraf Ghani, blamed the hasty withdrawal of US and NATO troops for the deteriorating security situation across the country. See this video from the BBC.
The reality of what we are facing right now is escalating violence, and the violence getting closer and closer to us every day. I'm extremely concerned for my colleagues, for my loved ones. Just today, we lost friends, a civilian who worked for the Afghan government and managing communications. We hear disturbing reports from across Afghanistan about restrictions imposed on women, particularly in districts that fall to Taliban, which as a woman is extremely frightening to me and to my colleagues and family members and women's rights activists that I know, as well as news of extremely concerning extrajudicial killings by Taliban that target people that are even remotely associated with the government in several areas that they have captured. So the future, the immediate future at least, seems really bleak.
Shahrazad, the individual you mentioned there who was killed this morning was Dawa Khan Minapal, and we appreciate you speaking to us in light of his loss, in light of this being a very very sensitive and uncertain time for you. In terms of moving forward, there are calls for the Taliban to re-engage with those peace talks in Doha, but if they feel like they are gaining ground, and it practically does feel like they are doing that, what is the incentive for them to come back to that negotiating table? What is their game plan?
Well, I think this is where the UN Security Council and the international community's role can be emphasized. I am disheartened to see that the international community is mostly focused, and our main allies like the US are mostly focused on withdrawal and then helping the Afghans that have directly worked with them. This is important, but the futures of millions of Afghans are at stake. I think the world and the international community should do more. The region particularly should do more to bring Taliban to the table. I think the region should very clearly tell the Taliban that a Taliban coming to power to force continuing the violence is unacceptable. They need to see that their government will not be accepted and recognized, not even in the region, if they continue on this path of destruction and killing.
Shahrazad, you talk about regional governments, but I also want to talk about the US, their withdrawal, and in particular their speed of withdrawal, which Ashraf Ghani has said is a reason for the situation deteriorating as it has. Where do you point the finger of blame?
Well, I also hold the Afghan government accountable. The international community has been talking about withdrawing militarily from Afghanistan since 2014. We should have been better prepared, but also, of course, the US, because whatever we see with this withdrawal is far from orderly or responsible, which was what was promised to Afghans. It has already caused huge human suffering and tragedy and atrocities, and as well as, of course, the countries in the region who I think are waiting, and some of them are waiting and hedging their bets, but the future destruction of Afghanistan all-out war in Afghanistan will harm all, not just the Afghans.
Women have taken up guns in northern and central Afghanistan, marching in the streets in their hundreds and sharing pictures of themselves with assault rifles on social media in a show of defiance as the Taliban make sweeping gains nationwide. One of the biggest demonstrations was in the central Gah province, where hundreds of women turned out at the weekend, waving guns and chanting anti-Taliban slogans. They are not likely to head to the front lines in large numbers anytime soon because of both social conservatism and lack of experience. But the public demonstrations at a time of urgent threat from the militants are a reminder of how frightened many women are about what Taliban rule could mean for them and their families. There were some women who just wanted to inspire security forces, just symbolic, but many more were ready to go to the battlefields, said Halima Parastish, the head of the Women's Directorate in Gah and one of the marchers. That includes myself. I and some other women told the governor around a month ago that we're ready to go and fight. In areas they control, the Taliban have already brought in restrictions on women's education, their freedom of movement, and their clothing, activists and residents of those areas say. In one area, flyers were circulating demanding that women put on burqas. Last week, 17-year-old Neha Paswan was allegedly beaten to death by members of her extended family in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh because they didn't like her wearing jeans. Her mother, Shakuntala Devi Paswan, told BBC Hindi that their teenager had been severely beaten with sticks by her grandfather and uncles after an argument over her clothes at their home in Savraji Karg village in Deoria district, one of the least developed regions in the state. She had kept a day-long religious fast. In the evening, she put on a pair of jeans and a top and performed her rituals. When her grandparents objected to her attire, Neha retorted that jeans were made to be worn and that she would wear it, her mother said. The argument escalated, resulting in the violence, she claims. Shakuntala Devi said, as her daughter lay unconscious, her in-laws called an auto rickshaw and said they were taking her to hospital. They wouldn't let me accompany them, so I alerted my relatives, who went to the district hospital looking for her, but couldn't find her. The next morning, Shakuntala Devi said, they heard that the body of a girl was hanging from the bridge over the Gandak River that flows through the region. When they went to investigate, they discovered it was Neha's. Police have lodged a case of murder and destruction of evidence against 10 people, including Neha's grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, and the auto rickshaw driver. The accused have yet to make any public statement. In Bhong city of Rahimya Khan in Pakistan, the Ganesh temple was attacked by miscreants in broad daylight. The Barelvi extremist groups attacked the temple, and they daringly live-streamed the attack on Facebook. A terrorist who was shot by police when he stabbed 2 people in Streatham had been released from prison just days before the attack, despite concerns that he retained extremist views, the inquest on his death has heard. Sudesh Aman, 20, was shot dead by surveillance officers after the attack in Streatham High Road, South London, on the 2nd of February 2020. His two victims, a man and a woman, survived their injuries. Police had asked their prison governor not to release Aman, his inquest heard. Coroner Mr. Justice Hilliard said Aman was arrested in May 2018 on suspicion of terror offences and was later jailed for 40 months. He served his sentence at Her Majesty's Prison Belmarsh and was released on the 23rd of January 2020. While in prison, Aman had apparently signalled his intent to strike again once in the community. Police were so concerned about Aman's apparent unrepentant behaviour in Belmarsh that they asked the prison governor not to release him. However, the request was turned down because the offence Aman was jailed for could not justify an extension of his sentence. Detective Superintendent Dominic Murphy told the inquest that a search of Aman's prison cell previously found some handwritten notes that appeared to show loyalty to the Islamic State group. Mr. Murphy said he told another prisoner he was not finished with these non-believers yet. After his release, Aman was required to live at a probation hostel in Streatham, with conditions such as a tag and a curfew. He was followed by surveillance officers whenever he left the hostel, and they were authorised to carry firearms after he was seen looking at knives, the inquest heard. On the day of the attack, he was under surveillance by 4 officers on foot, and other officers were in vehicles in a surrounding road. At 13:57, Mr. Aman entered a general shop, which sold, amongst other things, knives. Aman took a 20-centimetre knife from the shop and then left, jurors heard. He then stabbed a woman outside the White Lion pub before stabbing a man outside Cash Converters, striking him in the right side of his torso. An officer opened fire when Aman ran and turned to face the pursuing police, still holding the knife. Mr. Murphy said that officer and another one shouted at Aman to stop and declared themselves as armed police. The officer then fired a shot, which didn't seem to have an impact on Aman, and instead struck a shop window which shattered and hit a woman standing nearby. Officers opened fire 5 more times and Aman fell to the ground, 62 seconds after he took the knife. An apparent suicide vest Aman was wearing was found to be fake, the inquest was told. A train conductor who celebrated pub's reopening by declaring that he didn't want to live in a Muslim alcohol-free caliphate has succeeded in arguing that his opinion is the equivalent of a religious belief. Secular atheist Jeremy Sleeth was sacked for making the Facebook post in which he claimed Britain should not become like ISIS to beat COVID-19. The long-serving conductor was fired for gross misconduct, but the 63-year-old, who describes himself as a secular pluralist atheist, alleges he was discriminated against due to his firmly held convictions. Mr. Sleeth is against one religion or one-party states, believes that all religions and none should exist in harmony, and is serious about his beliefs. An employment judge, who described him as a character, has now ruled his views amount to a religious or philosophical belief, and his allegation of discrimination can now be tested at a full tribunal. In the post that led to his dismissal, Mr. Sleeth said, "Thank F, our pubs open up today. We cannot let our way of life become like some sort of Muslim alcohol-free caliphate just to beat COVID-19. We must button up, face it, stiff upper lip, if necessary, herd immunity it, but we must learn to live with it and not let our fantastic culture and way of life be trashed." Following a complaint to West Midlands Trains, he posted, "Apparently somebody has complained about a comment I made about hoping UK never becomes an alcohol-free Muslim caliphate or Islamic state. That's unbelievable, but true. If that's a controversial statement now, the world's gone mad. Incidentally, I wouldn't want UK to become any sort of religious or theocratic state, whether Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Jewish, Chinese, Politburo, or even Christian." During a West Midlands Trains investigation, he said, "Most Muslim states in the world are alcohol-free, e.g. Dubai. I don't think it's slurring the Muslim religion. Not all Muslims don't drink. Some people might be Jewish by faith, but still eat bacon. I did clarify previously that I was saying I didn't want to live in a Muslim caliphate, and I meant no theocratic, hardline state. We do live in a Church of England state, but it doesn't have an impact apart from Sunday working hours. My ideal society is secular, where all religions can be together." The Birmingham Employment Tribunal heard the senior conductor was sacked for gross misconduct in September 2020, having worked for the train service since December 2003. Mr. Sleeth says that he is not anti-Muslim and does not wish to be disrespectful to religions, but he has the right to criticise. He also believes Remembrance Day should be a non-religious ceremony, and he does not believe that Church of England bishops should have the right to sit in the House of Lords. He told the tribunal, "I am secularist, pluralist, free-thinking, and I want all religions and none to exist in harmony, and I value freedom of speech highly." Employment Judge David Battersby ruled that the specific beliefs that Mr. Sleeth holds are philosophical beliefs protected by the Equality Act 2010. In the Bible Belt of the USA, white evangelicals resist getting vaccinated the most. And Kent Hovind has been arrested. This video is from Frank Lovell, our Kentucky correspondent.
More than 6 months into the USA's COVID-19 vaccination campaign, evangelical Christians are more resistant to getting the vaccine than any other major religious groups, according to newly released data. Some 24% of white evangelicals said in June they wouldn't be vaccinated. Evangelicals of all races make up about 1/4 of the U.S. population, and health officials say persuading them to get the shot is crucial to slowing down the spread of the Delta variant, fueling recent increases in the COVID-19 cases. Also from religious news, as reported by Bob Smietana, a controversial Alabama creationist preacher who recently sued the federal government for $500 million, was arrested in late July in a domestic assault case. An arrest warrant dated July 19 alleges that the Reverend Kent Hovind, known also as Dr. Dino, intentionally threw his estranged wife, Cindy Lincoln, to the ground, causing bodily harm. The same day the arrest warrant was filed, Lincoln also filed a petition for protective order against Hovind in Conecuh County, Alabama. The petition alleges that one of Hovind's associates threatened Lincoln with a gun in January of 2021. The alleged domestic assault occurred in October 2020, according to the petition.
Meanwhile, according to Bishop Robert Barron, the Olympics opening ceremonies in Tokyo featured one of the worst pop songs of all time. Yes, I'm speaking of John Lennon's Imagine, sung by a large children's choir and a bevy of celebrities. See his video.
I've been a Beatles fan since I was about 12. Their songs have worked their way into my soul. In fact, I would say they probably provide my idea of what good pop music sounds like. And of the four Beatles, my favorite is John Lennon, who I consider to be perhaps the greatest popular songwriter of the 20th century. I love John Lennon with the Beatles. I loved him in his solo work. I remember when he died in 1980, when he was killed, I was a college student in Washington, and I deeply and sincerely mourned him when he died. Now, I say all that as a preparation, just to let you know I've got absolutely nothing against the Beatles or against John Lennon's work, but I must say I do not like the song Imagine. Now, this came to my mind when very recently at the opening of the Tokyo Olympics, the song was played and it was sung by a children's choir, and then it was a pre-recorded versions by different pop stars. And it was done as a kind of secular anthem. It was very clear that it was a song that should bring us all together. Again, I love the music. I think it's got a great arrangement. I love the way John Lennon sang it. But I hate the lyrics of Imagine. And I bemoan the fact that it seems to have become something of a secular anthem. See, take a look at some of these words. It begins this way. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us, only sky. Well, frankly, I can't imagine anything worse than that. See, to say, imagine there's no heaven, there's no hell. What that means is there is no finally absolute criterion of good and evil. There's no way finally to measure the difference between one person's private inclinations and another person's private inclinations. There's no final moral judgment. And therefore, it's an invitation into a very dangerous space, the space described by Dostoevsky. Once you stop believing in God, then anything is permitted.
Well, I leave you to judge. Now for some spoof news. It is the silly season after all. For the benefit of non-Americans, which includes me, Marvel Comics counts among its characters such well-known superheroes as Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America, the Hulk, Thor, and Wolverine. Also, a bit more background for you. Canard means an unfounded rumour, and Ullman is a fictitious city named either after the mayor of Seattle or after a naive style artist and author who died in 1985. Chris Pratt, meanwhile, is a real actor with an unfortunate name, to English ears at least. Here's the report. Many know superstar actor Chris Pratt as his character Andy Dwyer in Parks and Recreation, or Star-Lord, from the Marvel movie franchise Guardians of the Galaxy. He's famous for his self-deprecating humour and winning smile. Up until now, Mr. Pratt has considered himself a proud Christian. However, all that has changed recently, and sources say he's looking for a new deity to follow. We were having coffee one day, and he told me he started reading the Bible, cover to cover, said longtime friend Andy Canard. And that's when he realised God is a jerk. It's not known what part of the Bible broke Mr. Pratt's faith. Perhaps it was the book of Job, where God goads Satan to attack the title character and kill his family. Or perhaps it was Isaiah 13:15-16, whoever is captured will be thrust through. All who are caught will fall by the sword. Their infants will be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses will be looted and their wives violated. Regardless, Mr. Pratt feels the need to find a less destructive and narcissistic deity. He looked at Islam for 2 minutes. That's all it took for him to know it wasn't for him, Andy Kennard said. Anonymous sources in the Satanic Temple say representatives from the actor have reached out to find more about their faith. Supposedly, Star-Lord read the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple and is impressed. We're happy he's leaving his anti-LGBTQ church, a Satanic Temple source said. At some point, we're going to have to explain to him we don't actually believe the devil is real. Andrew Kennard owns 50 acres in the greater Ulman area, and he had had enough of the town's theocratic ways. He attended a town meeting 2 years ago and asked if he could erect a bronze statue of a major biblical figure from the New Testament in the town square. He would, of course, pay for the entire project 100%. Everyone present voted for the measure. Fast forward to today, and a statue of Pontius Pilate now stands proudly in the town square. The Roman governor who presided over the trial of Jesus and allowed him to be crucified sits on a horse overlooking Ulman's one streetlight. The evangelical elders are furious. They are demanding Mr. Kennard take the monument down. However, the crafty Kennard noted that they had signed a contract and Pilate will remain. Taking the Pilate monument down would be destroying history, Mr. Kennard said. That's not going to happen on my watch. Finally, the campaigning group Say No to Atheism are inviting us to join a global prayer to end atheism. This occurs on Thursday, August the 12th at 1 p.m. CDT, Central Daylight Time. A global prayer to end atheism. It's free. I wonder if it'll work. Stay tuned on this channel for the live Q&A show Free Thought Hour. This week it has a different format. Instead of chatting with a guest, I'm showing a recording of an event which happened earlier today, the AGM of Atheism UK. It was my inauguration as president. And Lawrence Krauss spoke to us. Take a look. This will be starting in a few minutes. We will be back with our weekly news review on all our platforms at the same time next week. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, set the notifications, etc. Thank you for watching.